Atmanirbhar Bharat vision articulates India's internal strengths to build our nation. To maintain 8% GDP growth rate, we will have to create 8 million jobs per year. And it also means if we create 8 million jobs per year, then of course we will be maintaining 8% GDP growth rate. There is a two-way cause-effect relationship. India's economic security and India's even national and territorial security is and can be threatened by AI. Taxation is less about raising money for government, more about policy measures to drive consumption in a particular way. Israel-Hamas, or Trump on rampage, or China as a rising power, or India-China adversary. Here is a solid fortress called India after Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. It is that gets reflected in the economic survey and the budget also. I'm also personally convinced after my careful study that the vision called Atmanirbhar Bharat also secures India from possible adverse currents in the world. Atmanirbhar Bharat, my dear friends, I personally deeply believe that it's not just a game of words, it's not just a play with words, not just some attractive words to be used, etc. Atmanirbhar Bharat vision articulates India's internal strengths to build our nation. As even Prime Minister describes like 4 Ds, he says: democracy, demography, domestic market, and there is one more D. One more D, allow me to fall on my feet sort of, but 4 Ds. The point here is how we use our demography, the population, as our strength. That's such a huge market, the very population, within which more than 65% of the population is supposed to be below or around age 35. This is best described as the demographic dividend. It is demographic dividend if the youth finds gainful employment. So the whole economy will have to be geared to job creation. Like the economic survey and the budget states that we need to create 8 million new jobs every year. That's the target. That we need to create 8 million new jobs every. It's a stupendous challenge. But then there is a two-way cause-effect relationship between the two. That if we need 8% GDP growth rate for achieving the status of developed economy by 2047, Okay? To maintain 8% GDP growth rate, we will have to create 8 million jobs per year. And it also means if we create 8 million jobs per year, then of course we will be maintaining 8% GDP growth rate. There is a two-way cause-effect relationship. 8 million jobs are a cause, 8% GDP growth rate becomes an effect. But taking total GDP into consideration, if economy focuses on achieving 8% growth rate, then that process itself is going to end up by creating jobs for youth, which will, it's sort of two-way relationship between the two. This Atmanirbhar Bharat vision was formally proclaimed for the country on 12th of May 2020. So it was right in the midst of Corona. But like I'm telling you, the eternal student in me carefully watching and then studying what is that Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. Since then till now, I have been convinced that the vision turns India into a solid fortress, building on its own internal strengths. So think of defense production within India. A major part of our budget goes into defense expenditure. But a major part of that defense expenditure used to be importing military hardware. India was world's largest importer of military hardware. So our hard-earned foreign exchange was being spent in importing military hardware. Not to also speak of another very critical component, that is, we were almost dependent on other countries for our defense. So even like we find that Pakistan had transgressed across the line of actual control in what is now known as the Kargil war, we should remember that to fight an effective war, we needed on foreign countries, including countries in Europe like France and also United States of America, and Russia has always been our major supplier of military equipment, but for our defense, we were dependent on foreign countries. The situation has radically changed in last 10 years. Now India has taken off in a big way in defense production. And not only that, now India is not like world's largest importer of military hardware. In fact, India has begun to be major exporter of military equipment. And in this budget, the defense expenditure has gone up to 13% of the budget. It is an increase. It's a major increase, but of course it is required. In light of our defense requirements, it is required. We need a lot of research and development activity in defense also. We would do well to understand that AI, along with China coming up with DeepSeek and America having OpenAI, and now Sam Altman seeking to visit India, all of it has a direct defense and security implication. India's economic security and India's even national and territorial security is and can be threatened by AI. So of course we need to wake up, I believe we have, and therefore there are budgetary provisions even for AI, budgetary provisions for research and development over there, turning India into like Atmanirbhar Bharat. Okay, so if you start putting these things together, I like, as usual, I hope you begin to enjoy the pleasure of understanding that when we solidify the economic unity of this massive nation called India, and with the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, we turn India into a fortress, okay, that secures India from adverse impacts of breakdown of global supply chains. That India in itself internally is an interlinked, it has its own domestic market, it has its own savings rate, It has its own ability to raise funding internally, mind you. This budget, again, pays a special attention to raising finances in private sector also. Like so far, accelerating Indian economy meant capital expenditure by government. For better or for worse, there are restrictions on capital expenditure by government. And the fiscal discipline has to be followed, otherwise the economy will collapse. So you want to maintain 8%. I hope you begin to see this, what I have explained. We want to maintain 8%. Our own savings rate, if they have come down to about 20%, assure a minimum growth rate as long as we maintain 100% savings investment rate. Then our own internal, that part of GDP which we turn into savings and savings are turned into investments, then it assures us 4% GDP. How are we going to reach 8%? We need investment. So we need to encourage FDI, therefore increase ease of doing business, and we also need to have such economic policies which encourage capital formation in private sector. You will see that in this budget. And big time involvement of even private sector in infrastructure projects. Someone who wants to shout, of course, let them do their job, that the country is owned by Adanis and Ambanis. Maybe they want some other families to own the country. On finding that that's not happening, that's a little bit of a fun. Economic facts will remain that for achieving 8% growth rate, we do need to encourage our internal, also increase savings habit. So accordingly, you have indirect taxation policy and direct taxation policy. Taxation is less about raising money for government, more about policy measures to drive consumption in a particular way. So increasing GST on, say, luxury goods is supposed to act as a disincentive. Or reducing GST on goods and services for, say, education, research, development, etc. nudges consumers towards putting money in those areas. Similarly, for direct tax, this budget comes up with a special policy announcement that in another week, the finance minister will undertake a major exercise for simplifying direct taxation, especially income tax. A new law will be tabled that will increase voluntary compliance of laws. Finance minister did state that during last year, another 90 lakh people have voluntarily complied taxation. Actually, apart from indirect taxes are indirectly paid by every single common citizen whenever we buy any goods or service. But direct taxation is predominantly progressive. It is increased percentage of taxation as you go on earning more and more. That is supposed to be our general policy towards taxation. But the tax structure in such a way that people voluntarily feel like filling up that single page form and paying the taxes because it helps you. That while tax rates are reduced, it is in fact that reduction in tax rates itself that results in increase in net collection of the taxes. So you will see that broad reality that if India's strength lies in middle class, and if during last year it was this middle class that clearly felt troubled and was looking for some solace in the budget, here is that solace in increasing the tax slab from 7 lakh to 12 lakh. There are lots of complications there. I will not go into those complications. But that acts as a relief for middle class. The point to be understood here is, then if middle class is left with investable surpluses, they are called investable surpluses. that because taxes are reduced, say with the minimum tax bracket, that I'm telling you actual figure, with the changed tax structure, in the minimum slab, those who were paying that minimum tax, okay, they have extra 70,000 rupees for this year. Consumable surplus. It's called consumable surplus. They have those extra 70,000. What are they going to do with that extra 70,000? There are only two choices, okay? They are either going to save it, which means our savings rate will increase, and then as long as we maintain 100% savings investment rate, it's going to accelerate economy, okay? Or they are going to go to the market and use that money to buy goods and services, okay? So this is kickstarting of the market. That the very fact that they are left with a consumable surplus and start using that money. So while taxes are lowered, the net tax compliance increases. And that additional surplus available for middle class also ends up in accelerating Indian markets. I am expecting you to have noticed that the routine Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, it is Reserve Bank Committee. It meets once every 3 months. It met yesterday, okay, and for the first time in last 5 years, the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee has reduced interest rates by 0.25%. It may be only our Marathi brain, if I may say, which may sort of first reaction could be, so what? 0.25, oh, it is so low, it appears so low. But when I tell you that actually 0.25% in the whole Indian economy means many thousand millions of extra rupees are now suddenly available in the market. If we have a, say, flat for which we took a loan, and if our monthly loan installment happens to be, say, 1 lakh rupees, 25% reduction in interest rate reduces monthly loan installment from 1 lakh to 90,000. So 10,000 per month. So it is extra 1,25,000 rupees in the common man's hand. And that, after all, again the same thing, that the money will either be saved or spent. Dono surto mein it is, the Indian economy gets accelerated. This has happened for the first time. Last 5 years were, economically speaking, they were years of trouble, all post-corona period. During corona period, the interest rates were supposed to be very high. Interest rate is also used as an instrument to control inflation. Because reduction of 0.25% interest rate makes extra money available, so it means more money in circulation, M1 as it is called in economics. More money in circulation. Unless requisite equal corresponding goods and services are produced, if only money is injected into the economy, it will mean prices will go up. Because supply has increased, but the demand hasn't. So you need to adjust it to ensure that actual net goods and services also increase. But for the first time, therefore, in last 5 years, here is extra money available in the hands of people to push consumption of goods and services in the country. So overall, the main point I have been making across last couple of minutes is that the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision articulates, integrates, organizes India's internal strengths to make our own case of reaching 8% GDP growth rate. To the extent to which we manage this, it will mean whether there is Russia-Ukraine war, it's not like those factors will not affect us, but they will affect us least. Or Israel-Hamas, or Trump on rampage, or China as a rising power, or India-China adversary. Here is a solid fortress called India after Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. It is that gets reflected in the economic survey and the budget also. Deeper you study that, deeper you understand that, you will begin to enjoy even more and more. I have to bring to your notice that back in 2020 itself, in that sad and tension-filled corona period, I had conducted 2 special sessions, all online then, but the recordings are available and we have posted them on our YouTube channel. 2 sessions of 1.5 hours each, in which I have explained the very Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. And even the year 24-5, the economic survey, and the budget 25-26 will best be understood in light of this Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. It will help you develop this grand overall outlook towards the economic survey and the budget.